It has rained nearly every day since the new year started in Ireland, and I don't really remember what the sun looks like. But staying inside has given me a guilt-free chance to try the new changes to tanks, healers, and DPS in the Midnight pre-patch. I made a recent video going over why the pre-patch is the best time to try tanking and healing, and today I'm going to answer which are the easiest and hardest classes to learn for beginners starting with tanks. Should is not a question we ask ourselves. Some things are just best left unanswered.
Am I an asshole? Are my kids a mess? Is my wife a money-grubbing whore? I mean, those are questions, right?
Okay, a few housekeeping notes for new tanks before we get started. Any and all specs are subject to change, and what I go over today may be different from what we experience when Midnight launches. My predominant focus is Mythic Plus. All tanks are generally viable in raids, and which one you end up playing really just depends on your guild or whatever your raid group needs. I am not an expert tank, but I am strictly Pug Life, and I tanked through the original classic trilogy, although this is like saying you're the smartest 6-year-old, but whatever, and I did get to 3k in Mythic Plus on 3 different characters during the War Within. I'm hoping to motivate those who haven't tanked before and want to get on into it. There's no role as rewarding as tanking, and if you want to challenge yourself, take control of your groups, prove to online strangers that you're a big baller, and have a very fast queue time, then tanking is for you. And the last but not least important point I want to make is about meta. I've seen a lot of recent Reddit posts with players interested in tanking but wondering if they have to pick a meta tank in order to get into groups. No, absolutely not. You do not have to pick a meta tank as a beginner to get into groups. When players talk about the meta, what they're really referring to is things like survivability, damage output, group utility, and general synergy with the group and the dungeon design at that exact point in time. It does not mean that non-meta tanks are unplayable, or that you can't time keys with them, or that they're bad. It just means that if all tanks are played perfectly at a high key or higher keys, this specific one performs slightly better or is more useful to groups in this specific environment. Anywhere up to like 15 keys, the difference is pretty tiny. Above that, it does start to matter. But just because this shouldn't have an impact on the lower key pug life doesn't mean it doesn't. And despite this, there's no escaping the fact that meta does have an impact on group composition. Meta gives people comfort. When someone invites a meta tank, they feel like they've reduced risk, even if the actual benefits are negligible. Perception influences invites more than real balance sometimes, and that's sad. But remember, you are the most desired role in the game. Your actual tank spec matters way less than the fact that there's a tank scarcity. And again, unless you're pushing keys higher than like 15s, if it's similar to the War Within, at most you're gonna have to wait maybe 30 seconds or a little longer to get into groups playing a non-meta tank over a meta one. I played Blood Death Knight through all of the War Within, which was consistently ranked one of the quote-unquote worst tanks, and I don't even remember waiting longer than like a minute until I got into the 15-ish range. You should learn how to tank first, see if you like it or are good at it, and then you decide if you want to push higher keys. And if you do, then you can start having the whole meta talk. And by that time, you'll at least know how to tank, and the meta might have shifted so you can change if you want or not. Also, who cares?
Get on with it!
Moving on. I will be going through each of the tanks, what their strengths and weaknesses are, what type of person and playstyle it appeals to, and if you can play them shit-faced. I will be measuring easiness based on the learning curve, their rotation resource complexity, and generally how easy the class is to focus on actually tanking rather than the nuances of the actual class you're playing. That was confusing. Okay, so let's talk tanks. So, the 3 easiest tanks right now, in my opinion, are Protection Paladin, Protection Warrior, and Guardian Druid. Not because they're basic or simple per se, but because they're forgiving, they're intuitive, and you can be successful by pressing the functionally correct buttons instead of the absolute perfect buttons. So let's start with Protection Warrior, the blue-collar working 9-to-5 brown boy. So both Guardian Druid and Protection Warrior could probably fit interchangeably into the easiest tank to learn, but the reason I'm putting the Warrior first is because conceptually, Warriors look and feel like you expect a tank to look and feel like. You wear plate armor, you got a sword and a shield, you whack stuff, and you block stuff. And also its toolkit and rotation remains very similar to the way it was played in the War Within, and honestly wouldn't be that dissimilar to someone who only played vanilla World of Warcraft. And I'm specifically highlighting the Mountain Thane build today, as the hero talents in Mountain Thane focus on amplifying your already existing abilities rather than adding new ones. Plus your Thunderclap turns to lightning, which is badass. With the Warrior, there's no magic tricks, there's no real gimmicks, there's no weird ramp-up time. You build rage, you spend rage, you keep up your shield block and ignore pain, and then you rinse and you repeat. You have great mobility with charge, you can intervene, you can leap. You got a little range pull in Heroic Throw. You've got AoE threat with Thunderclap. You've got an AoE stun. You've got 2 single target stuns, a kick, a fear, an AoE taunt, a party buff. Group defensives. Warriors have it all. And while it does seem like you have a lot of buttons, and you do press them fast, the core rotation is basically Shield Slam and Thunderclap, and then keeping Ignore Pain up and Shield Block up. It's amazing what you can kind of get away with just those 4 buttons. And for the rest of your toolkit, the Warrior is designed so that it's very easy to understand what your buttons are for and why and when you should press them. You press buttons, you reduce damage, and you stand tall and you stand proud. The Warrior is easy because the damage intake is smooth and predictable, your buttons do exactly what they say they do, and playing a Warrior helps you learn fundamentals fast. Prot Warrior teaches you how tanking actually works without having to worry about other things. Some important cooldowns you have are Last Stand, Shield Wall, and Spell Reflection. As you improve on your Warrior, you can begin timing Spell Reflection for some badass reflex, as well as weaving in Overpower for where Shield Slam resets. So it does have a learning curve if you are looking for more nuance, but it doesn't require you to follow through with it. Playing a Warrior rewards good habits, but doesn't overly punish you for bad ones. In terms of the beard category, it's also very easy tank to successfully complete keys while imbibing anywhere from about 2 beers to about 20. You can kind of get away with just jamming buttons. After 20 beers, you're on your own, and no one, not even you or me, knows what's going to happen there.
Julian!
Some of the negatives for the Warrior is that the damage isn't really the flashiest or the most modern. It can feel kind of basic bitch once you understand the fundamentals. It relies on rage generation, but it does seem a little bit low in the pre-patch, but this may change. Warriors also have a reputation for being kinda, dumb Zug monsters, which doesn't really mean anything, but I wanted to mention it. The Warrior generally appeals to players who like straightforward fundamentals. For people who want to learn tanking basics, stuff like threat positioning, cooldown timing, the Warrior is your jam. And it's also great for those who enjoy classic, punch-you-in-the-face melee combat. For number 2, we're going with the Guardian Druid, the Stoner tank. Guardian Druid is the easiest tank mentally. The Druid was one of my least played classes in general, and its tank spec, Guardian, is one I've only recently been testing. But my lack of experience with this tank is actually what makes it good. I was able to pick up the general rotation and abilities in about 5 minutes and immediately start tanking. You're not juggling a million buffs, you're not timing things down to the millisecond. Similar to a Warrior, you're just building rage and you're spending it. You're a big old bear with a big old health pool. I would suggest opting into Alun's Chosen, as this emphasizes astral influences or whatever, but it's much simpler a tree compared to Druid of the Claw, since it doesn't really affect your rotation, besides enhancing your arcane stuff. It's easy because it has a massive health pool, it's got a range pull, it doesn't rely on blocks, so you don't have to worry about mobs hitting you from the back, that's what she said. It has extremely forgiving damage intake, simple resource management, and mistakes don't immediately kill you. A Guardian Druid is very hard to accidentally die on. This tank champion has been tanking keys on his Druid blindfolded, so put that in your pipe and smoke it. The basic rotation is to keep Iron Fur up, you can actually macro this to your other abilities and just forget about it. It's stackable and has no cooldown. You press your Thrash and your Mangle, and you stand in front of enemies and you zone out. For cooldowns, it's got some relatively short ones. If you use them correctly, you get consistent, stable damage intake. You have Survival Instincts, Frenzied Regeneration, Bark Skin. Guardian lets you learn positioning, pulls, and pacing without the stress of perfect execution. This is a tank you could definitely play Blackout. Highly recommend. Some of the negatives is that its threat generation isn't explosive and can feel a little sluggish, especially if you're undergeared. It has limited group utility compared to the Paladin or the Warrior, and there's less flashy button interactions that can kind of feel boring. It also doesn't have great crowd control, depending on what you pick in the spec tree. The Druid appeals to players who want a low stress and high durability tank. Players who enjoy slow, ponderous play and consistent survival will also enjoy it. If you like big health bars and shrugging off damage, the Guardian Druid is for you. Now let's move on to the Protection Paladin, or as I like to call it, the Swiss Army Knife Fancy Boy tank. Paladin is easier for me than Prot Warrior, but it's only because I've played it longer. The difficulty with Prot Paladin is really knowing when and how to use your utilities, which are amazing. Everyone always picks on Ret Paladins because they either never use their utility spells like Blessing of Sacrifice, Blessing of Protection, Lay on Hands, or if they do, they only use it on themselves. And while in my experience this doesn't hold quite as true with Protection Paladins, knowing when to use your utilities and when not to is what adds to the difficulty of this class versus the other two. There's also a bit more cooldown management than, say, a Warrior, as you want to ensure you're standing in Consecration, although this has been made easier in Midnight. I like to think of the Prot Paladin as the thinking man's or woman's Prot Warrior. You have to contemplate a bit about what you should press instead of just pressing what lights up. Some abilities, like whatever that Shield of the Righteous, require 3 Holy Power to use, so you want to make sure you have enough to use it, but you also have to decide if you should use that Holy Power on Ward of Glory. It's not that it's more difficult conceptually than a Druid or Warrior, or harder to understand what your buttons do, but for beginner tanks, I find you have to spend more focus on what your character is doing more so than what's going on in the dungeon. And if you fall behind or zone out a bit, or get distracted by spilling beer on your keyboard and then your crotch, you can get punished. But your basic rotation is to keep Shield of the Righteous up, spend your Holy Power, you don't want to cap that, press Avenger's Shield to silence and pull things, and generally on cooldown, and you just hammer stuff until it stops moving. Some of its strengths are its excellent group utility. You have Blessing of Sacrifice, Blessing of Freedom, Blessing of Protection, Lay on Hands, Cleanse, a Battle Res, and your 3% damage reduction aura. You can off-heal with Ward of Glory or heal yourself. It's good at dealing with magic damage and bleeds with things like Blessing of Protection, Divine Shield, and Spell Warding. You also gain passive reduction to all damage through Mastery, Divine Bulwark. It has a lot of crowd control abilities like Hammer of Justice, Turn Evil, Blinding Light. You can remove poisons and diseases on yourself or party members. The Paladin's basically like, what if we gave one class answers to everything? Prot Paladin's a solid less than 10 beers drunk tank. After that, it gets a bit risky. Some of the negatives is that it has more decision points than the Warrior or Druid. It has lower mobility compared to other tanks. Divine Steed's really the only baseline ability that allows you to move faster, although you do get freedom if you want it. It can feel unforgiving if your defensives aren't timed well. You also have the second lowest health pool of all tanks. Prot Paladin appeals to the fancy players. You want to look cool, use some holy stuff, you're a warrior of light. It's for the goody two-shoes. It is the queen of group utility. A good Prot Paladin can carry a group of stinkers like no other. Protection Paladin is probably the best pug tank out of all of them. Now we're going to get into some of the harder to learn tanks. No, I'm not saying don't play these tanks, and all of the harder tanks are perfectly viable, and 2 of these quote-unquote harder tanks are looking to be the top performers in this upcoming season, at least as of now. Generally, all of these remaining tanks feel about equal in terms of difficulty, but they all possess the same nuance that makes them a bit more difficult than the tanks mentioned above. Namely, these tanks punish an experience more than they teach fundamentals. Learning to tank on the next 3 is kind of like learning how to drive stick shift, but choosing to do so during a snowstorm. We're going to talk about the Vengeance Demon Hunter, the ADD Gymnast. Now, I don't have as much experience with Vengeance DH compared to the other tanks, so take what I say here with a little grain of salt. I have read that this tank is significantly easier than it was in the War Within, and has less inconsistent defensive ramping bonuses, which has made it more streamlined. But all that being said, Vengeance isn't necessarily complicated in terms of buttons, but it's just punishing if you mismanage mitigation. Your survivability revolves around Demon Spike uptime, Soul Fragment generation, self-healing timing, and proper mobility usage, which is ironically one of its strengths. Unlike the Guardian or a Warrior, you don't passively smooth damage, you just manage short defensive windows. This tank is appealing because you are the most mobile tank in the game. You can double jump, you can glide, you have quick repositioning, you can bebop and hopscotch all over the place. Although your chances of leaping to your own death are vastly increased with this bad boy. It has a very aggressive playstyle. You're jumping into packs, you're pulling aggressively, you're exploding your spear palm. I don't do this. Now, some of the negatives: it has very spiky damage intake. When you're covered in mitigation, you feel great. When you're not, you're falling over. It's much less forgiving than a Warrior or Druid. And it does encourage bad habits. Because you have mobility, a lot of newer players will overpull, or they'll leap way out of the healer range, and you outpace the group. This mobility is a blessing, and it's also a death sentence. It is probably one of the most fun tanks to play half in the bag, but I would keep ears to less than 5 if I was rocking Vengeance. So it's not necessarily beginner-friendly, but if you're comfortable with cooldown timing, watching your mitigation, and you're okay with short defensive windows, you'll be fine. It appeals to players who like fast gameplay, people who've played Havoc before, if you enjoy mobility and fluid combat. If you don't like standing still and you've got ADD, Vengeance is for you. Now on to Brewmaster Monk, the red-headed stepchild tank. Brewmaster is my second least played tank after Vengeance, but it has been simplified and is looking very hot going into midnight. Fundamental reason this tank is difficult is because you have to track stagger, you manage brews, you plan mitigation ahead of time, and you have to react pretty perfectly under pressure, all at once. Your health bar kind of lies to you due to stagger. Your damage is delayed, not prevented. You need to have constant awareness, and your mistakes compound instead of reset. You do have some great cooldowns with Fortifying Brew, Celestial Brew, Zen Meditation, you got Stagger, you've got Purifying Brew, you've got Expel Harm if you want that. You can even summon a big old black ox. Cool. But the fundamentals with Brewmaster and why it's hard is that you have unique mechanics that require constant attention. Your damage prevention isn't direct, it's delayed, and you have to kind of manage that stuff. And it's got a lot of moving parts. You got brews, you got stagger stacks, positioning, you gotta know where the enemy is, you roll around everywhere, sometimes into other mobs. But all that being said, the Brewmaster appeals to players who like active mitigation and juggling a bunch of resources. If you like a complex rotation and rhythm, this is for people who like to play the drums. And players who like high-skill, nuance-based roles. There's a lot to learn here. And last but not least, my favorite, the Blood Death Knight tank. Like the Ring Bearer, to play Death Knight is to be alone. Out of all the tanks you can play, the Blood Death Knight is going to get the least amount of attention from your healer. You are the rock and the enemies are the wave, and there is no lighthouse. If you try to play Blood Death Knight like Prot Warrior or Guardian Druid, you're going to die, and then you're going to blame your healer, and in 99% of the cases, you're going to be wrong. Now, it's not hard because the rotation is complex or it suffers from button bloat. It's hard because it's immediately punished if you aren't fully focused on what you're doing. Blood Death Knight does not have a traditional rotation. It has a priority system based on damage intake. Your main goal is to keep your bone shield stacks up. If your bone shield drops, you're going to be naked, afraid, and dead. Heartstrike is your main rune spender because it generates runic power. Then you're going to use this runic power on Deathstrike, and Deathstrike heals based on recent damage taken, so the timing matters more than the frequency. If you press it too early, it's wasted. If you don't press it, you're dead. You also have Blood Boil for AoE threat and diseased applications. You don't really want to sit on charges of this. The first big dungeon pull on a Blood Death Knight is a butt clencher. Nothing is more demoralizing than getting gangbanged and big tree fall hard on your first pull in any dungeon. If your group doesn't immediately boot you or leave, let's just say their confidence level in your abilities will be a bit lower going through the rest of it. You're going to need to understand damage patterns. Timing matters a lot. You can't just press defensives randomly. Mistakes are going to be instantly noticeable. This tank feels absolutely awful until suddenly it feels amazing, and that learning curve can be really brutal for new tanks. So Blood DK has a core design problem. Its unique survivability model is different from the other tanks. The other tanks prevent damage, you absorb damage, and then kind of erase it. If it's tuned too high, the Blood Death Knight becomes functionally immortal and is independent of healers, which runs contrary to everything Midnight is about. Survivability on the Blood Death Knight is really the only lever that Blizzard can realistically pull without redesigning the spec entirely. So they've kind of chosen death by 1,000 small cuts instead of a massive rework. The Blood Death Knight is strictly a 0 to 3 beer kind of tank, although I have completed keys completely blotto. Now, the upside to the Blood Death Knight is that there's no greater tanking thrill than huge mob pulls with a Blood Death Knight. It's like riding lightning. You'll finish the dungeons, or at least I do, drained and sweaty. The Blood Death Knight is predominantly for people who want to be unstoppable killing forces. I myself have personally finished and been a dead group member on the sideline watching in dungeons where the only remaining member fighting the last boss was the Blood Death Knight tank. And I'm talking about soloing the boss from 50% health until it died and the key finished. No tank is as survivable and no tank is as rewarding to play as the Blood Death Knight in the right hands. If you are a loner in real life and you want to be a loner in WoW, then Blood Death Knight is the tank for you. I'm going to play it no matter what happens. Ride or die, baby. You're fucked! So how do you begin tanking? The best way to learn how to tank, like anything, is just to start doing it. But kind of like how flight simulators teach pilots to actually fly before putting them in charge of an airborne metal box full of 300 strangers, delves and follower dungeons offer a solid way to get acclimated to tanking without putting other players' lives in danger. Once you have a bit of confidence in what you're doing, I would suggest starting in Heroics or Time Walking. These are easier and more forgiving than Mythic Plus, and even if the gear isn't great, the group expectations are lower, giving you a little breathing room while you begin to learn. Stick to one tank. Learn it and see if you like it. The goal is to get comfortable enough that you can focus on the dungeon and not at your action bars. Learn one dungeon at a time. You don't have to take in every available dungeon at once. Move into the 2 to the 4 key range. If you're getting to a certain key level and find yourself struggling, you can always do what I did. Make a second alt with the exact spec and start at the bottom again. Communicate with your group if you want to, but if you don't want to, don't. Believe me, if they think you're doing something wrong, they are going to let you know. Treat wipes as information gathering, not personal failures or judgment.
You're going to die.
Tanking isn't about knowing everything, it's about being calm and responsive when shit hits the fan. What has changed to make tanking easier going into Midnight? Blizzard has added a brand new affix in the lower Mythic Plus keys that literally highlights a default route throughout the dungeon. Certain trash packs are marked visually and can count towards 100% enemy forces when killed. Completing these marked packs satisfies the dungeon progress requirement. With this affix, player deaths do not reduce the dungeon timer, which reduces stress when you're learning. I think the goal of all of this was to give players a baseline path to follow, so you don't really have to debate which pack is mandatory while you're still learning the dungeon's layouts, pacing, and how to tank. It doesn't remove routing skill entirely, it just gives you a little bit of an entry point to learn dungeon structure confidently before you learn how to optimize. Now, beyond the routing affix, Blizzard has also adjusted the difficulty scaling so that lower keys are a bit more inviting and less cornhole-ish. If you want to begin tanking in Midnight, I would suggest starting with Prot Paladin, Prot Warrior, and Guardian Druid. These 3 tanks let you focus on the actual tanking part instead of having to balance both the tanking and optimize rotation and cooldown management. I would save Blood Death Knight, Vengeance, and Brewmaster for when you understand the dungeons, when you're prepared for damage patterns, and you've got a solid grasp of the fundamentals. Play what you enjoy, not the meta. Whatever tank is going to get you consistently tanking is exactly the tank you should play. Learn one dungeon at once, or just a few if it makes it easier for you. Percentage and pathing is the hardest part of Mythic Plus until you get to higher keys. Don't take it all in at once. Always wear a red shirt and brown pants when you tank, that way no one will see you bleed or shit yourself. I like to tank naked. If a DPS says do big pulls before the dungeon starts, just know that you're probably in for a rough one. But remember, you're the tank. Go at your own pace, see what you can handle at the start, and then increasing the pull size as you become more comfortable. Those motherfucking DPSs wanted a big girl boss group lead, they could have signed up to tank themselves. Ain't nobody forcing you to play Red Paladin. Come on, son. Pull your pants up and get to stepping. If Stevie can tank, you can tank. Anyone can tank. Join the tank army. We need you. I believe in you, and I love you.